so we've got it now. Glad you could all be with us here today. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and we will get started. All right, welcome to Childcare Aware of Minnesota's May 2022 Tell Talk. Today we're joined by Erin McKee from the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy and Janssen Hang from the Hmong American Farmers Association for a presentation on planting the seeds, growing community and cultural connections through farm to early care. Tell Talks, or Topics for Early Learning Leaders, are monthly webinars for early childhood program leaders to facilitate solutions-focused discussions for your questions about the early childhood field in Minnesota. These one-hour webinars do not meet the standards for a formal professional development training event, and participants will not receive a certificate of completion. Tell Talks are designed as a community building opportunity for leaders to engage and share ideas surrounding a specific content area. The Tell Talks team consists of Nikki Lepowski, Quality Improvement Coordinator, and myself, Christy Berg, Workforce Advising Coordinator. We work with Corey Woosley and Katie Hoffman at Childcare Aware of Minnesota to bring you Tell Talks. A couple of our recent topics have included creating inclusive environments for children with autism to play, learn, and grow, and care fellowship and advocacy. Next month, Erin Young from Childcare Aware of Minnesota will join us to share information about the Teach Scholarship and how you can use it as a retention and recruitment tool for your program. Please visit the Program Leaders page of our website if you'd like to view previously recorded Tell Talks. After today's presentation, you will receive an email from me with the PowerPoint slides and any other resources shared today. What is Childcare Aware of Minnesota? Childcare Aware of Minnesota supports the professional growth of early childhood educators with professional development opportunities, eager to learn online training, grants, parent aware, and scholarships. We are a resource and referral network for early childhood education in Minnesota. We assist families in finding a childcare program and keep the community informed on the importance of high quality care and education. Childcare Information Services is a department within our organization that specializes in statewide information sharing and assisting families who are looking for childcare. CCIS sends a welcome packet to new programs and surveys programs every 3 years on business policies and tuition rates. The rates are confidential and can influence CCAP reimbursement. CCIS receives calls from program leaders across Minnesota with general business questions and can route you to the appropriate person to contact. Childcare Aware partners with Center for Inclusive Childcare, which provides free relationship-based professional development, including support, modeling, and resources for childcare programs throughout Minnesota. A coach will spend time with your program providing support, focusing on the successful inclusion of children with challenging behaviors or special needs, implementing health and safety best practices, and supporting the unique needs of infants and toddlers in your care. Achieve, Minnesota Center for Professional Development, supports individual, trainer, and RBPD membership applicants, and also approves courses and training events. The Achieve MNCPD website has several resources to share, including a job board, policy info, Minnesota Career Lattice, and a virtual career guide. The Tell Talks team partners with several organizations to offer coordinated resources surrounding early care and education needs. As always, participants of Tell Talks are encouraged to ask questions, make contributions throughout the presentation, and engage in dialogue with our presenters. We would like Tell Talks to be interactive, so if you would like to turn your cameras on, that would be great. You can also use the raise hand icon if you have a question or comment, and we can take you off of mute to share your ideas and questions. Alternatively, you can always put those into the chat at any point. And we will be recording the Tell Talk today, and we'll send a link to the recording in the follow-up email. So now, without further ado, I am going to turn it over to our presenters, Erin and Janssen. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Christy. We're so excited to be here.
Glad to have you.
And I'm going to share my screen here, so hopefully you'll be able to see our slides. Is that showing up for you?
It is. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for inviting us. We're really excited to connect with this group and share a little bit about our project. So we'll start with just introducing ourselves and getting a little bit of background on what Farm to Early Care is and why we're excited about it. And then we'll talk about our specific project that we're partnering on right now. And then I think we'll share a little bit of information about how you all could get involved in Farm to Early Care if you're interested. So that's what we plan to cover. We'll have one point after we talk about our project where you could ask questions specific to that, and then we'll take questions at the end, or you can always, as Christy said, just write them in the chat anytime. But we'd love to, answer anything that you're interested about. So my name is Erin McKee. I am the Community Food Systems Program Director at the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy.
Hi everyone. My name is Janssen Hang. I'm the Executive Director with the Hmong American Farmers Association. So a pleasure to meet all of you. And Christy, thank you for having us join the TEL Talk.
Great. So we will share a little bit in case anyone is not familiar with Farm to Early Care. Basically, when we're talking about Farm to Early Care, what we're talking about is making a connection between the kids that are in early care environments, and that could be any kind of early care. So that includes a Head Start program, a center-based program, an in-home early care program. Any kinds of early care educators can fall under the umbrella of Farm to Early Care. And we're talking about connecting those kids with farms in their local area or with gardening activities, and basically making a connection between those kiddos and where their food comes from. And there are tons of benefits for these programs. And one of the ones that I think will be very relevant to this group is just the improvements with nutrition that have been found when people have done studies on these programs. So they have shown that kiddos that are participating in farm to school programs actually eat more servings of fruits and vegetables per day, and they're more willing to try new foods, and they're more willing to eat a greater variety of foods as well. So it really can be a strategy for increased nutrition and lifelong health and wellness, and a prevention strategy for preventing diet-related disease and obesity in the future. And it really is especially amazing when you're doing it in the early care environment, because there's such a potential beneficial impact for the kids' entire lives. We're really excited about this opportunity. We also see great improvement in their understanding of where their food comes from, so farm and food literacy. And this slide is really one of my favorites. This is actually from when we were doing a different partnership with HAFA, when we were working with the Head Start program in St. Paul. And you can see here that the kiddos did a field trip and were able to visit HAFA's farm. And one of the farmers generously let them actually harvest some of the beans from their plants. And then the teachers were doing an activity where they did an art project, and they had the kids drawing the beans that they had harvested. And then they also had the beans in their meal the following, it was a couple days after they had done the field trip. And so all of those things were such an awesome connection. And one of the things that I love about this picture is if you look at the way that this kiddo has drawn green beans, and they specifically are thinking about the seeds. And it just is so cool, because I think if if you asked a kid to draw a green bean before they went on this field trip and learned from the farmer about how the beans are inside and how they plant them and how they grow, they would not have had this conception about what the bean looks like, but it clearly made such an impression that their entire idea of what a green bean is was affected. So it's just so cool. And you can see the little girl at lunch is also opening up her green bean and showing the seeds, because that's what the farmer had talked about when they did the visit. It just is such a cool demonstration of kind of the wraparound holistic way that this can influence kids' ideas about what food is and where it comes from. So I just adore this whole slide.
So like Erin talked about, the farm to school, farm to early care program, and just seeing the smiles on the kids, it makes a big difference, right? And we're trying to build, one, so that they have a strong, healthy system here, that, they get engaged about, not just about consumption, but where it comes from. And that's clearly where HAFA comes into the picture, because HAFA, we work with Hmong farmers, right? On the HAFA farm, we worked up with Hmong farmers and use farming or use food as an avenue to connect us with communities. And it's so important that, we have farmers here connecting with children, because those are kind of the stepping stones, as Erin mentioned. It's how do we change their perceptions of eating fresh, locally grown produce, or just produce in general, and just a long-term impact that involves that. But one thing about this farm early care program, that it's not about just teaching children and building their capacities and building their personal and physical health and mental health, but it's about really supporting farmers too, right? It's about providing opportunities for farmers to grow their markets. It's about, creating job opportunities. It's about, really making their farm business operation a financially viable farming and sustainable farming operation as well. And so this particular aspect, really want to focus on like how is not only is that, access to food is great for children and building their capacity, but it's also about building the capacity of our farmers so they can continue to sustain themselves and provide these children with fresh, healthy produce. And so what we learned that, for every dollar that is invested into this farm to school simulates actually a $2.16 return in local economic activities, right? So that, in a sense here, like 1 in every $3 gets circulated back into the local economy, according to the National Farm to School Network. Mm-hmm. But not only that, but also the fact that, having access to fresh, healthy produce really changes the student's perspective. And what we learn is that, as this farm to school program really gets lifted up here, we've seen that, there's a dramatic increase from like 3 to 16% where students are heavily engaged in meal participation, not only just consumption, but also really broaden the perspective of, food, what that means to them, how their taste buds changes as well too, right? And so that in aspects here, then all of a sudden we have a full-blown movement around how cafeterias are really changing how it looks, changing the landscape of, wow, okay, let's go from these, prepared meals to having more of an open salad bar or access to fresh fruits and vegetables, right? And so those are the great things that comes about this farm to school, farm to early care program. And that's heavily something that, we really want to elevate as well too, because we see that there's so much strength in that.
Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about these programs, I think the K-12 farm to school movement had a little bit of a lead and was kind of more visible or active before the farm to early care movement got as much attention. But the opportunities when working with early care are so huge. As I said, just the intervention when kids are developing their taste preferences and their eating habits and their ideas about food that they're going to carry forward for the rest of their lives, it's so huge. It also is really important to engage with early care educators because we know that kids depend on them. They don't have any control over what they're going to consume, unlike, you know, a high schooler might have more opinions and ability to choose what they're going to eat. But for kids that are in this early care age, they're depending on their families and their early care educators for the majority, sometimes, often, of their nutritional intake in a day. And so we really want to make sure that we can help all of you and support you to be able to get the best food possible for your kids while they're in your care. And the other thing that's really cool is that because the norms around how early care educators are already doing activities with the kids are really focused on hands-on experiential learning. That works so well with farm to early care. There's so many opportunities for doing educational activities that are about getting your hands dirty, getting a garden going, lots of different opportunities there. So it really dovetails well with the kinds of activities that are already going on and the best practices at the early care level. Honestly, it's probably a best practice for K-12 to do experiential learning, but early care educators seem to kind of be more on board with that than sometimes the kind of structures that are there for the K-12 movement or setting. But it also just gets people ready, gets the kids ready to be eating the fresh, healthy foods that are in the farm to school program. So I know there's a lot of kind of links that we can make between those two environments. So that's kind of the background on farm to early care in general. And I'll share a little bit later about what's happening in Minnesota around farm to early care. But we wanted to give you just a little bit of background on our current project that we're working on. And this is what our third year we're going into for this project. So I'll have Janssen, if you could share a little bit of background just about HAFA in general and how you got into this farm to early care movement.
Absolutely. No. So as Erin had mentioned, kind of giving you guys a content to, what really led to the work that we do, right? And clearly the Hmong American Farmers Association is a mouthful, so we always say HAFA as well. So and just in case if I start referring to HAFA, you'll know what that means here. But the Hmong American Farmers Association, we are a membership-based nonprofit organization that work with Hmong farmers in the Twin Cities and surrounding metropolitan area. That was created to kind of support Hmong farmers so that we could, really support them so that they have agencies over themselves, as well as, create a vibrant and financially viable farm business operation. And so the mission of the HAFA is more so to advance the economic, social, and cultural prosperity of Hmong farmers through cooperative endeavors, capacity building, and advocacy work to really build a pathway to intergenerational and community wealth. Right. And what really springboarded this was because Hmong farmers had been truly at the forefront of the local food movement and also in the revitalizations of farmers market systems. So if you have gone to the farmers market, you can easily see that over 50% of the vendors in the farmers market are Hmong farmers here. But because of lack of access to land, markets, trainings, and research here, that pretty much regulated Hmong farmers to more second-class status here, while averaging about $5,000 an acre compared to the mainstream vegetable producers who are generating about $8,000 to as much as $20,000 per acre here if they're growing organically. And that's what really led, the formation of the inception of HAFA was pretty much primarily to foster the inequity that exists in the food and farming industries. Heavily around, the challenges that Hmong farmers face relative to access to land, markets, trainings, research, and also financial assistance as well. And so programmatically at HAFA, we actually run 5 programs here. We run the land access programs that provide, long-term land access to our farmers. In fact, HAFA, we run and operate what we call as the HAFA farm, a 155-acre farm that is located in Dakota County. If you guys are anywhere traveling along the High-52 corridor, heading down to Rochester from Twin Cities, you'll definitely notice a 10 feet high deer fence, a bunch of little red sheds, and various different rows and plots and nothing that looks like commodity or monocropping at all whatsoever, right? So if you have traveled, that is the Hoffa farm. And on the Hoffa farm, it is an educational incubator / research farm, where we work with over 100 Hmong farmers on that farm here, to really model sustainable practices such as polycropping, intercropping, contour planting, but at the same time, giving farmers the opportunity to have long-term land access, to really challenge them to become better steward of the land. Also on the property here, we believe in building a vibrant ecosystem, because not just around what farmers are producing, but around having a bee apiary on the farm, because as mixed vegetable producers here, we know that pollinators are critical, to really help increase the yields of produce here for our farmers. We also work with a number of other partner organizations, like the University of Minnesota Bee Lab, University of Minnesota Potato Research Lab, to really kind of help and design and really build the capacity of our farmers here through alternative farming practices around these specific fruits, vegetables, or value-added products as well. The other thing that we heavily focus on is our farm business management program. Primarily to really support our farmers around, deepening their understandings about financial literacy. What is a budget? What is cash flow? What are direct and indirect expenses? And on top of that, what we do through our farm business management program is that we work with our farmers one-on-one to create farm business plan, so that they can take it to any sort of ag lending institutions here and obtain a micro loan to support their farm business operation, whether that's an operational loan or whether that is funding to support and purchase a new equipment or a farm tractor or whatever that may be here. Okay. The other program that we have goes hand in hand is our trainings and our research. And the training component things needs to say that it's not that Hmong farmers don't know how to farm. It is part of our DNA, right? I was reminded earlier that farming is not just something, a nuances, but it is a millennial thing, that our farmers, our Hmong communities, we are subsistent farmers back in Laos here, right? And we grew enough for our families, but now coming to the States, because of lack of skill sets in the post-industrial society here, many reverted back to farming. And so it's about creating and meeting the farmers where they're at. It's about marrying what Hmong farmers know to what are some of the cutting edge research that are being conducted by the University of Minnesota extensions here, to really build our capacity, or build the farmers' capacity. And not only that, but this training program is not about just training, but it's all conducted. So it's bicultural, bilingual training. So we have quite a robust training program that focuses on like 7 different core modules here, from whole farm planning to soil health, soil fertility, and even food safety. And so a lot of our training here that we do during the winter month really gets really transpired to, during the growing season, right? That we take what is taught during the training sessions here, and then we apply it on our demonstration / research project, or research site on the Hoffa farm here. And a lot of that is completed by staff, but at the same time, it's also part of that collaboration partnership with University of Minnesota or other community-based organizations here to really create a vibrant ecosystem, so that our farmer can actually see how the process is being grown and how, in what way can they incorporate that into their actual farm business practices here. And last but not least is the alternative market program, right? Where the majority of our farmers, I mentioned earlier, like their primary market has always been the farmer's market. And at the same time that they're always at the mercy of the farmer's market. Just for example, like in the last 2 years, at the start of the pandemic, needs to say that we're not out of it yet, but the start of the pandemic here, because of social distancing scares, because of the scares about getting COVID here, there had been about 50% reduction in the number of consumers come to the farmer's market, right? But needs to say that that was just a couple of years ago. But prior to that, the Hmong farmers always been at the mercy of whatever challenges that actually comes out of it. And so what Hoffa looked at was to design this alternative market program to really diversify their market outlet besides the farmers market. And that in that process here houses our food hub, where HAFA, we would aggregate all the produce from the farmers here to meet contracts, right? Whether that is with the farm to school program, whether that's with Head Start, whether that is with the co-ops, or that we run a robust community support agriculture program or CSA program to provide fresh, locally grown produce to members of our communities. And so that is where we come in, right? And that's how we get connected to, looking at the Farm to Early Care pilot project, is that what we've seen is that food connects us all, right? Food is also medicine, because we have done work with, M Health Fairview and running a VegRx program. And that it is so critical that we use food to connect us to really build the next generation. And the next generation are in these children here. And so that's what really led to, our Farm to Early Care CSA initiative, was primarily to capture that component using food. But we are such an integral component here, right, at HAFA, that, while we work with our farmers to create a financially viable and sustaining farm business operation, that we can use that as a pivotal point as part of our multi-pronged approach, right? We can secure market outlets for our farmers, but at the same time, we can use the produce that they grow to connect us with community members and to really elevate the importance of, increasing access to fresh, locally grown produce, changing the dynamics of how children sees food, right? And not necessarily just food in general, because in most communities, it's like, oh, it's about easy access. It's about, going to the corner stores, picking these chips and whatnot, but really changing the dynamic to say, okay, food really comes from like what's come from the roots, what's being grown. And so using food as medicine, food as connecting, but at the same time, it's also about, the social connectedness, right? Connecting, consumers, providers with the farmers. Right? And for the most part here, that is clearly where this comes in. We're like, wow, we're such an integral component that we can reach a broader audience as well too. So in our Farm to Early Care CSA, we currently are working with about 16 Hmong farming members here, right? Where we will aggregate the produce from. And then what we've done is we've also secured and connected with a number of Hmong in-home daycare providers, 14 of them. And what we really want to do that came out of this program was really to, one, promote healthy eating. Second of all, but use this as a component here to help our in-home daycare provider really look at different aspects resources that are available to them, and particularly the CACFP program or the Child and Adult Food Care Program, and then how we can insert food in these weekly boxes to the providers, and the providers can potentially take that, create their meals here, provide and give it to the children, offer it to the children, but at the same time here, utilize this opportunity to obtain some subsidy here through the CACFP program here that can really support their operational expense as well. And so in that aspect, that what we found is that we want to get a really diverse group. So we actually have like 3 providers that are enrolled in CACFP program, and many of them are on the fence or have had some experience, but have actually pulled out of the program as well. The other thing is that out of the 14 providers that we work with here, they actually encapsulate about 82 children who are impacted by the foods that we provide these daycare providers. Our CSA programs, or Farm Early Care program here, run 18 weeks long here. That consists of both the summer and also fall seasons here. And it typically starts about the second week of June. And actually, when we say fall, it actually run until Thanksgiving, right? Where in a Thanksgiving CSA, it's a more of a special CSA where we would incorporate a number of staple crops, including like culture appropriate produce as well, to kind of help providers and also CSA members to kind of prep for the Thanksgiving holiday or Thanksgiving lunch or dinner or whatever that may be here, right? But prior to the ending of the CSA program, that we would meet with our providers, on a regular basis throughout the growing season to connect with them, whether that's virtually or in person, to discuss about challenges and opportunities. How does, having access to these fresh local grown produce on a weekly basis change their perspective, how they're thinking about meal plans and how children are consuming, or what are the responses from children about what is a carrot, or what is the eggplant, or what is that bean? Just like what Erin mentioned here about that drawing earlier on the green bean, where instead of having one long string bean, you have a bunch of little bean seeds that creates the actual green bean as well too. So we found that to be very informative. And then really kind of talk about like, okay, are we really changing the landscape of how children's, and not only children, but also providers thinking about how to incorporate fresh locally grown produce into their daily meals. So, so the biggest thing is though, what we started off with is that, yeah, we work with our farmers, right? We work with the farmers to say, hey, here are the produce we want to secure for this season. We also work with our farmers because we want to make sure that the produce that they're growing will fit the needs and is done in an appropriate manner, that it was safeguard, not just children, but also adults. So in that aspect here, that we heavily focus on best practice of food safety, how it's being planted, how it's being harvested, how it's being washed, how it's being stored. And then once we complete all that, we will work with the providers, identify a drop-off location, and then we will coordinate the deliveries to these drop-off sites where providers or members can come and pick up the CSA boxes here. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll follow up with actual feedbacks and say, what is your intake? Is that feasible for you? Clearly, because we also want to look at from a very equitable lens here, right? Saying that, hey, well, if we bring it here, do you have the capability to get to that place to pick up these? Or, are there other issues that you are challenged with, other obstacles? Or let alone, like, what does this mean, for you as a provider, or for the children? What are their take on it? And so we find that very informative as well. While we carry out this practice, is that we're constantly communicating with them. And that's what really helps us build a more vibrant farm to early care initiative.
Mm-hmm. And then in addition to the coordination with the farmers that HAFA is doing, we also are working with the providers, and we're also working with partners from the different sponsoring organizations in Minnesota and with the Minnesota Department of Education to try to get resources for our providers, and collaborate with them to make sure that we're supporting everyone and making this as easy as possible. And then we also are planning to create and publish some bicultural, bilingual resources as part of this project. So some recipes and menus and just guides so that early care providers will be able to do this even if they're not part of our cohort. So our cohort of providers we're focused on, I think they're all Hmong early care educators who are in-home early care providers, mostly on the east side of St. Paul, but we're going to create these resources and make them freely available for anybody who's interested. And since we have such a large Hmong population here, we feel like that's a really good community to create these resources for. We also want to connect them to each other. So we're hoping that, depending on what's going on with COVID, we could have some kind of dinner or a farm visit or some kind of harvest celebration together, but we'll kind of see how that goes and what's going on later in the season. But we really are excited to be able to connect with people that way. We were going to share a little bit on, we've been doing gathering some feedback. So this is our the second kind of year that has been really fully launched of this project, and we've been gathering some feedback from our providers on how CACFP works for them. I'll say like one aspect of this project has been gathering this feedback and then sharing some of that insight back with sponsoring organizations and with the Department of Education, thinking about like, how can we make these programs work for many different types of communities? And particularly we're gathering insight from the Hmong early care educator community for this project. and just sharing that back. But I think maybe we'll skip over this because I want to get to the kind of resources part, and especially actually, Janssen, would you want to share about this opportunity?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I do want to share that we are building our 2022 cohort, right? And that goes along with what Erin says earlier about that peer-to-peer learning here, that we always build it in a more of a cohort model so that we can work things together. Also, one thing that we believe is about having that coming into solidarity and also in that collective consciousness here. So that we can truly create systems that would work for early care providers here. And so with that said here, that we actually, HAFA, we still have spaces available for anyone who is interested in participating in our 2022 cohort. For the most part, a lot of our CSAs is actually drop-off is in St. Paul. So if you know of you yourself, or if you have any friends or families or other providers in your network who would be interested, please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll be more than happy to connect with them about the potentials of participating in our 2022 cohort, especially prior to the start of a CSA that will start in mid-June here.
Okay. Yeah, we're very excited about our 2022 plan. So if you are potentially interested, you could reach out to Janssen. Also, if you know of a friend or family, someone in your network, particularly if they're located in St. Paul, where the drop-off site is, please drop us a line, because we have a couple more slots, and they will receive free CSAs and free resources. And so we'd love to have a full cohort for this year, make sure that we are getting as many people that support as we can. And are there any questions from the group on our project before we move into the more general farm to early care, how do I get started part of our presentation?
I don't think I've seen any questions coming into the chat, but I'll continue to keep an eye on that.
Okay, we'll have time at the end too, just in case you want to hold your questions till then. That's totally fine too. We thought it would be good to just share a little bit of background, even if you're not participating in our specific project and cohort, but you are interested in getting started in farm to early care. How might you do that? And I thought we could just share a little bit about best practices and some steps to get started if you're on that journey and you're kind of just getting your own program launched, or if you want to expand too. And I would say here, these are best practices that we've heard from many different partners who are working on these programs, basically like trying to fit in any kind of farm to early care activities that you want to do with what you're already doing and with standards that already exist. So a lot of these, it's really easy to align, to serve your food as part of a meal that is fitting with the CACFP meal pattern. Use your local vegetable as the vegetable component in your meal. You don't need to like make a whole new snack time unless that's what's easier for you. So that's really helpful. And it also aligns with a lot of the best practices. So it is recognized, farm to early care and using local products is recognized as a CACFP best practice. It's not a requirement, but it is recognized as a best practice. It also aligns with Head Start standards. So it really can align with things that you're already doing and kind of the regulations and rules that you already have to follow. And then there are tons of resources already available, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It is really great if you can think about using culturally appropriate items, and that's something that we're working on. So HAFA can grow, Hmong vegetables that are used in traditional recipes, and then have those in the CSA boxes for the early care educators that are part of our cohort. And then they can make traditional recipes with those. And it's a really awesome connection to have all of those wraparound connections with their culture and with the community that you're serving. There are different ways to do farm to early care. So some people focus on the serving local foods portion, that's kind of the part that we're really focused on in our project, but gardening is also considered farm to early care. So you can definitely do that. If you can do lots of different kinds of activities, that really helps for the program to really succeed and to get the most benefit for the kids, because it's reinforced in different ways. And then if you can also get families involved. Families love these programs, by the way. I feel like I've seen a lot of early care educators using these as a way to really promote their own programs and to highlight what they do and use it as a kind of selling point with their families. So that's definitely well received, and families always are really excited about these programs. So if you want to get started, one of the first things is to think about looking for local foods. And there are a lot of different, it doesn't matter, you know, there's no one way to do these programs. It's very flexible. So it's not that it's one program that you enroll in and you have to do it a certain way. You could look at farmers markets, you can look at roadside stands, you can get a CSA. I think what's kind of cool is that there are different buying models that might work for different sized early care settings. And so you can kind of feel free to find one that works for you. There's a Minnesota Grown directory that, let me see, you can actually.
Minnesota Department of Agriculture, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Oh, for some reason that link is not working for me, but you can search, the MDA Minnesota Grown site, and you can do a search for different places to find local farms, and that can really be helpful. Let me see. And then when you're serving the foods, I think this is probably a lot of what you already talk about outside of farm to early care, but just having it be a very positive environment, using positive language. So I have had some early care, just my own. Okay, so I don't like bell peppers, for example. Personally, they just taste, I don't know, there's something with it, with my taste buds, they just don't work for me. But if I'm in front of kids, I won't say that to them. I won't say like, ooh, ick, bell peppers. I'll be like, oh, wow, look how pretty they are. They're so great. Look at the colors. And this attitude really makes a difference in kids' willingness to try new foods. Another thing that I have heard from providers is that they know some kids that are, really adventurous eaters, and they might have them go first because they'll kind of set the tone of, oh, this is fun, this is exciting, and just have it be a positive atmosphere. And you can use local foods and recipes that you already know that they like. That's a really good way, just substitute local items for things that you already serve. So if you already are serving carrots, you can get those locally. They're so good. They're so delicious. And you can use those in regular recipes that you're already doing. You don't need to develop totally new recipes to be able to serve local foods. I have heard too that, one thing that I think is really important is that kids need to try new foods. Some different studies have had different numbers, but it could be like 8 to 10 times before they really develop a taste preference for it. So one thing, like I have 2 kids too, and I think about this like, okay, they didn't really get into that kale the first time that I served it, but I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try again. And there might be success when you serve it for the 5th time. So that is kind of something to just keep in mind, not to give up after one unsuccessful try with a certain food, because it could change next time they have it. The other thing that I think is fun about local foods and farm to early care, a lot of times when we talk about these programs, and in our project too, we are really focused on fruits and vegetables because that's what Hoffa farmers are growing and producing. But when you're thinking about farm to early care in general, you can look all over the menu and all over the meal pattern and substitute any kind of local foods for any of those items. So you could get local grains, you could do wild rice, you could do local meats or cheese or dairy products or breads or, kimchi, whatever you want to serve, any kind of item can be local, and you can kind of think outside of, we don't just limit ourselves to fruits and vegetables when we're talking about farm to early care projects. The other thing that's exciting is you can make those connections with the experiential learning that you're already doing. And you can think about some books that might be related to food items or gardening or cultural foods. And we have a list of those. I'm going to share our website that you can look at. It has a lot of different resources that I won't like barrage you with links verbally, but you can look at the website and find the links to those. And then you could also do things like an art project or a math project where maybe you're counting the beans that are inside of those green beans or something like that. You can definitely connect the education component to any kind of area of education that you're doing. Dramatic play, you can have, you know, a little farm stand game or, you know, pretending to go to the farmer's market. I've seen so many awesome activities, and definitely don't feel like you have to invent a new curriculum, because there are really great curricula resources available to you too. And I will share that link for you. And Janssen, do you want to share about the field trips?
Absolutely. You know, I just on that note that what Erin had mentioned too was that what we've heard from actually our providers is they would incorporate like meal prep. So they have the kids work on like cutting up a carrot or what that like look like. So it's not about just consuming, it's not about just seeing, it's not about smelling, but how do you use it and how do you prepare it as well too, right? And that kind of goes into like some of these activities, like how do we engage them? We engage them by either having a garden, right? Or growing a few plants so that the children can say, oh, this is what a plant looked like. Oh, great. And all of a sudden it fruits and it's like, oh, it's a tomato. Like, wow, okay, I know what a tomato looks like. That's how it looks like before it actually fruits. Or, you know, take the children to the farmer's market. Just to have them see that array of vegetables that are being grown locally. Or take a field trip to the Hoffa farm, like this picture here. We walk around the farm, introduce them to different things. You know, one of the biggest themes is about knowing your roots, right? And your roots is not necessarily cultural, but at the same time, like knowing where the plants are coming from. It's not the grocery store that it comes from. It actually being planted. Here's what a farm look like. Here's a mixed vegetable farm. And in some of the activities, what we do is we actually have like sunflowers or green beans or snap peas that we will actually engage the children to actually plant it, and they can go home with that, right? And really see that grow. So that those are some great tactics that we have used during our farm to early care, farm tours, and different activities that our kids can fully engage in as well.
Yeah, these were so fun, and I really hope these pictures were taken pre-COVID, and I'm really hoping we can do that again, because it's just so powerful to see the kids on the farm. It's really fun for the kids, and it's so cool, like the farmers that get to meet the kids and see where their food is going to is just really powerful. I wanted to also highlight that we are working on some opportunities to support farm to early care in Minnesota. One thing, so we have a farm to early care network in Minnesota. So if you're interested in this, I really encourage you to, you can sign up for our newsletter on our website, and then you'll stay in the loop about different things that are happening. One of the things that is going on is we're trying to support a mini grant program. This is the second cycle of grants that we've been able to offer. We were just overwhelmed with demand. It was really exciting. We had, as it says here, we had 369 applications for the most recent round of funding. And we have 26 mini grants to offer. It's $250. This is for in-home early care educators. And we offered the application in both English and Spanish language. So you can see the map of applicants here. There were people from all over the state who applied. It was very exciting. And then we also did a center-based opportunity. We only had 8 grants for that, but they were $2,000 each, and we had 91 applications for that. And I don't have the map of that one on the slide, but they were also from all over the state. And there are review teams that are reviewing the grants to make the decisions about who the grantees will be. So we're super excited we had really amazing projects that were in these applications. We're really excited to see all of this work come to fruition. And I did want to say too, we're working on, right now, this mini grant program is funded through a private grant that we have for the Minnesota Farm to Early Care Network. But it's just a temporary grant. So we are trying to work on long-term funding for this support at the state level. I did want to highlight that if you're interested in engaging with that, so the legislative session is ending on Monday. They are making final decisions right now about what they should fund. And one potential thing that they could fund is opening up the current MD. The Department of Agriculture has a farm to school grant. We put forward a bill asking them to increase the amount of money and also to open up that opportunity to let early care educators be eligible applicants. Right now it's limited to K-12 schools. If you want to make your voice heard about this, we have a template letter that you could send to these decision makers. They're the ones that can really decide if they want to open up this opportunity. But we're really trying to get some state level support because clearly there's so much interest. We had this little mini grant program and we just were overwhelmed. So we really believe that our littlest eaters have a right to be getting access to these fresh, healthy foods. So we would love your support in sending a letter. And we have this template letter where you can just add your own description of your organization. And then we have like the information of all of the emails of the people who are on this committee of decision makers that we can share too. It is super time sensitive because they are closing the entire legislative session. They have to make decisions by this weekend essentially, and then the legislative session is over on Monday, but it's still in play. So if you're interested, we would just love for you to make your voice heard because that's really, it makes a big difference. And then the last thing that I wanted to share is the link to the Minnesota Farm to Early Care Network's website. It's farmtoearlycaremn.org. And that is where you can find, there's a whole section of resources, curricula, getting started guides, all that kind of thing. And you can sign up for our newsletter on there so we can keep you in the loop about opportunities for future mini grants or just exciting things that are happening around farm to early care in the state, because there is a lot going on. So we would love to have more of you join us, and we're excited to connect with you here. And then we just have a little bit of time left. I know we went right to the end here, but if anyone has questions or comments, we would love to answer them.
Erin, I was just going to ask, since that is so time sensitive to get messages to the legislators, would it be possible to put the hyperlink into the chat to that Google Doc? I think it was a Google Doc.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Let me get this letter and I'll put it right in the chat. Yeah, I feel like it's exciting. Like it's a real way there's a group of us that are trying to work on making it more accessible to engage in these decision-making processes, because it can be when you're on the outside, it can be really hard to see where can I say, have a say in these decisions that are going to affect me and the kids that I take care of. This is a tangible opportunity for action that you can take that will actually make a difference. I feel like they have to listen to every one of those letters, and it really does make a difference when they hear from people. It's kind of surprising.
Yeah, especially when it's multiple people within a short time frame too. It's, like any attention getting emails you might get in your inbox. If there are multiple from the same sender, you're like, well, what is this? I should pay attention to this.
That's right. Yes.
And I think another thing, just to add on that sometimes the voices of constituents are much louder than the voices of organizations here. And so your voice has larger impact as well. So just really want to elevate that and emphasize that yes, connect with your local, representative, your state senators here, so that we can definitely move policy here to support farm to early care, farm to school projects as well.
Yeah, who doesn't love increased funding and long-term for the,
Yes,
they're so meaningful like this, so important for the children.
absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions for Erin or Janssen today?
If not, like what Christy had mentioned earlier, we will be sharing our slides as well too, so that in there will be our contact informations. If you want to learn more about IATP, learn more about the Hmong American Farmers Association, or let it alone, if you want to join, you yourself or know a friend or family who want to participate in our 2022 Farm to Early Care cohort, please have them reach out and be more to connect with them and talk about next steps.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Janssen and Erin. It's been wonderful to hear about the great work that you're both doing at your organizations. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and wrap it up. I'll send the follow-up email in the next few days. And if anyone is copying and pasting things from the chat, I know we have quite a few items in there. I'll hang out for an extra couple of minutes, as if those of you who need to run can run, but if you're copying and pasting, I'll hang back so you have time to do that.
That's great.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, I put all those email addresses in there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And the template helps. I am more prone to email my legislators when someone shares a little template with me.
Totally. And I will say too, like, actually the fact of the letter is maybe more important than the content of the letter, if that makes sense. So just like 2 sentences that you personalize it and make it your own. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to wordsmith it, because it's really more about like, whoa, look at all these letters that we got, instead of reading very closely. So thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for letting us share. And it's so exciting to connect with this group. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you for all the participants too. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks everyone for being here. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.